Joining me this week is a comedian, an author, a redneck, and a liberal, Trae Crowder. Welcome to the Rubin Report.
I'm glad to be here, man.
A redneck and a liberal.
Yeah, that throws people a lot.
Do I have to even ask you a question to start this thing, or do I just hand it to you there and we go?
So what has become my favorite way to define that, was actually said to me at one of my comedy shows in Austin, Texas. A guy from Mississippi who now lives in Austin, a fan, came up to me and was talking to me, and he was like, and he seemed so genuinely frustrated too about like how he's been stereotyped or whatever for being a redneck, whatever else. He's like, man, I like to blow shit up, but I ain't fucking racist, man. You know what I mean? And he seemed like so upset about it. I wanted to put my hand on his shoulder. I was like, I know, buddy, it's all right. You know what I mean? But yeah, basically just, I grew up in a very stereotypically redneck fashion. Yeah. Dirt poor in the middle of nowhere, Tennessee, and I mean, it would be redneck by basically any standard. But I've never subscribed to any of those sort of like, to me, regressive ideologies and stuff that rednecks are stereotypically known for.
Yeah.
So, and it was never even really all that weird to me. Well, I've known for a while now that it's weird, but I'm saying I never even had to really think about it. That's just how I was. I didn't make a conscious decision to be this, weirdo thing that I am. It's just how it worked out.
It just happens, which is pretty much, I think, how it works for everybody.
Yeah.
What really, if you had to define what a redneck is, what really is a redneck?
Well, a lot of people, for some reason, assume that like I'm opposed to this guy for whatever reason, but I actually have a lot of respect for him. But I think Jeff Foxworthy defined it the best.
So it involves a TV on another TV?
Right, obviously he made a whole career out of defining it. But he got asked that question a lot, and the way he ultimately defined it was, he said, it's the glorious absence of sophistication, which I pretty well agree with. And in our book that I wrote with my tour mates, Corey and Drew, we sort of added an addendum to that, which was not giving a damn, generally speaking, about how people feel about you and the way you live your life and whatever. You know what I mean? I do what I do, and I like what I like, and I don't give a damn what you think about it or not.
Yeah.
That, coupled with the aforementioned lack of sophistication, is what makes a redneck to me.
Yeah. So interestingly, it's not really, even though I think people prescribe political leanings to rednecks,
Yeah.
in and of itself, it's not really. Well, it's just the idea of sort of, I do what I do.
Yeah, and want to be left alone, and want to have a good time and all that kind of stuff. And I honestly, and I feel so, I guess, naive or ignorant or whatever saying this now, but I genuinely didn't realize that to so many people it had those like political connotations or whatever. Don't get me wrong, I knew rednecks were stereotyped as being, dumb or, inbred or, racist or whatever. I knew those things existed, but I didn't know that to so many people, like, part of the definition of the word redneck is a regressive, racist, homophobe who hates books and loves Jesus. You know what I mean? Like that's what it means to people, and like nothing else. I didn't realize that existed at the level that it does until very recently.
Yeah, and you've done a bunch of videos on YouTube, I think, untangling some of that stuff and showing people, actually, no, that's not really all there is to this stuff. But how poor did you grow up? Because you're white, so I assume you get white privilege. Did you not have a lot of white privilege growing up, you big whitey?
So I've actually had to get used to being white as I've gotten into the middle class and stuff in the past few years. Like, that's a recent phenomenon for me.
Yeah.
I tell people that sometimes, and it's true, and I know it sounds weird to people. I never felt white growing up. I don't mean to imply that I felt black or is like, oh, you know what I mean? That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, my whole life, when I've heard about white people and what white people do, I've thought of like, Connecticut, like very yuppie-ish, like, the landed gentry. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I thought of when I heard of white people. And we were white trash, which is completely different. You know what I mean? Like, I point out all the time, like a good example I like to use is cops, right? And now, don't get me wrong, they're not shooting rednecks in the streets, but it's a well-established thing culturally that like cops and rednecks don't get along. You know what I mean? Every episode of Cops they ever made either took place in the ghetto or the trailer park.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like, there was definitely that feeling of like, I don't know, no, I never felt privileged at all, to answer your question. I mean, that's not the same as saying that I don't think white privilege like exists in a lot of arenas or whatever. It does, but I think if you're poor, it doesn't really matter very much.
Yeah.
The good thing is though, or the good thing, but if you manage to become not poor and you're a white man, then hey, it's just aces. You know?
Yeah. So now I don't know how much you have, but you're doing all right now. You're on tour. You're doing good stuff. You got some TV things cooking. Mm-hmm. Now you've gotten yourself out of white trash.
Yes, I have. Yeah, I managed to escape, which is not easy.
So now you can summer in the Hamptons and go to Connecticut like the rest of the people.
I'm not on that level
well,
yet.
It's just at the beginning.
But you know what's funny about that is my whole life I've had this thing where you mentioned like the Hamptons. I've never been, but like I promise you, if me and you went to the Hamptons right now and we like pull it and we first get in there, whatever, I would immediately become very uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And the discomfort is in a like a I don't belong here kind of way. But then there's also an element of like they know, you know what I mean? like they're gonna be able to tell, like look at me and tell like who let the trailer trash in here or whatever. And I know that that's irrational, but I really do like feel that and always have.
Yeah. So you grow up, white trash, redneck community in Tennessee. Mm-hmm. Give me some of the good stuff about that, because you've talked about the good stuff and the values and that kind of stuff. Give me some of that.
Nature is a big one. Like it's absolutely beautiful there. The best part about my home county is the lake, Del Hollow Lake. It's a objectively awesome lake, and so if you're into any outdoorsy stuff, we've got that in spades. And yeah, the sense of like community, everybody knows everybody. There's cons to that too, obviously, but there's a lot of good things about it. Like people actually genuinely care about each other for the most part, and also the food I'm a huge fan of. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like my grandmas, both of them, you know, what most people would call soul food or whatever, I guess, but just, you know, frying everything or whatever else. You know, not good for the arteries, but good for the soul.
There you go.
The music, I think the South, as far as regions go, I think the South has the best music, or produces the best music in the country and maybe the world. And just the way I mentioned earlier, like, you know, people like to have a good time. You know what I mean? Like people are not very tightly wound there. You know what I mean? It's a lot more like laid back and just like relaxed atmosphere, and none of that whole like stereotypical rat race stuff that happens. You don't have any of that. It's weird because sometimes I like there's a part of me that needs that or wants that, obviously, or I wouldn't be doing any of this. But there's also a part of me that appreciates that more like pastoral type thing in my hometown.
Sure. What about some of the political stuff? When you add that to this, so far we got kind of the good stuff, but you know the political stuff is where people start going, they're all backwards and all that stuff.
What's weird to me, and I've talked to like people from places like I'm from about this a lot, and they pretty well agree with it. Like as a kid growing up, people were mostly apolitical. I'm not saying they were like Democrats or anything like that. It's just like they didn't really care. It was like, it seemed to be more of an attitude of like, the hell with them all. You know what I mean? They're all full of shit. They don't care about us.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, and that was pretty much it. And obviously that has changed. But I've been gone from the town I grew up in for 12 years now. And obviously a lot has changed since I left, because it's not like that didn't exist, but I was never aware of it being this big like cultural dividing factor or whatever. Most people just didn't really talk about it or whatever as I was growing up. But then my hometown's a good example. The factory left and went to Mexico after NAFTA and all that, you know, and that the ripple effects of that were sort of, it took a while for it to get as bad as it is now. And I mean, it's bad and has been bad for years, like over 13-14% unemployment or whatever for over a decade now. And that's just made a lot of people, you know, angry and frustrated and upset and whatever else. And that wasn't really the case when I was a kid, or not on the level that it is now. And I think that's really what it's about. They've gotten pissed, because their like way of life has been, altered very negatively to a lot of them. And so I think that's where they've gotten so riled up and mad like they are now. Because I'm not trying to act like they were this enlightened group, because they weren't. But when I was living there and growing up there, they didn't have this like rage that they have now. You know what I mean? It just wasn't as much of a thing as it is. So it's kind of weird to me too, honestly.
Doesn't that say something interesting just about economics in general? Like that you grew up around this, but there was a factory, so people were working. So even if things weren't perfect, it's life. It's life like everybody else has. Then the jobs go away, and then suddenly it actually changes everything.
Yeah, because I mean, at any time that obviously you're not unique to Salina, my hometown. This is the story in most places like that. But so the jobs leave, and then the pills come in, or the meth or whatever, drug use, substance abuse, goes through the roof. So does crime, like theft, whatever, things like that. The businesses start shuttering. The downtown area is like totally dilapidated and whatever else, and it just brings everybody way down, and it's just this like cycle of horrible shit that and it really really pisses people off, or gets them going, or both, or whatever. Yeah.
All right. So before we go any further, I feel like I have to get your liberal cred too, because I know we're going to talk a little bit about what we both feel like is happening on the left.
Yeah.
And I always say, like, guys, I'm still a liberal. I'm for gay marriage. I'm for legalizing marijuana. I'm pro-choice. I believe in state education, and the list goes on and on. I'm against the death penalty. I'm for a reforming prison system. All of that stuff. These are liberal things. So can you just lay out some liberal cred so that 10 minutes from now when we get onto some other stuff, people go, wait a minute, is he really a liberal? Give me some liberal stuff.
I agree with literally everything you just named off. I agree with all of those. The sort of gateway liberalism for me was equal rights for gay people, because my uncle is gay.
Yeah.
And I found that out when I was like 8 or 9, and which is when I found out what gay even was. You know what I mean? I didn't even know anything about it before that. And as soon as I learned what gay meant, I learned, hey, your uncle, he's gay. Oh, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
But that I started picking up on things that before just went over my head, that like, these like rednecks or whatever that I was growing up around, that they were saying, or that the church was saying about gay people. And I immediately didn't like it. You know what I mean? And that sort of pushed me in that direction, I think. And so that's always been a big thing for me, because I take it a little personally because of my uncle, whom I love dearly. But everything else you named, prison reform, very, very against the war on drugs. That's another thing that I feel very strongly about, because it's also personal, because my mom is a recovering drug addict who also was a drug dealer who went to prison. So all that's very personal to me too, and I completely agree with it. As far like, I'm a believer, obviously it needs to be done the right way, but I'm a believer in universal health care. I also am very pro food stamps and welfare and things like that. I've always felt like it would be baldly hypocritical of me if I wasn't, because like I survived on food stamps as a kid. You know what I mean? Like, if it wasn't for food stamps, I don't know what would have happened to me. So I feel like I'm living proof that those systems can work. You know what I mean? And yeah, they get abused, but that's just the reality. My attitude towards that has always been, but what is the alternative though? Letting kids go hungry? Because I'm not willing to do that. So we got to just put up with some of the abuses. That's how I've looked at it. So, yeah, in fact, I think eventually we're going to need a universal basic income, because I don't think there's going to be enough jobs that exist for the amount of people that we have. So I think it's just the reality of where the world is going. All that stuff is pretty liberal, in my opinion.
You're a liberal. I believe it now. Yeah. I believe it. Did you see the story this week about Amazon is going to have a supermarket with 3 employees, because everything else is you're just going to walk in, scan your phone, you take it, you leave. That's it. I think they put it together. There's like a promo video or something for that on YouTube that I saw a couple weeks ago. Yeah, you literally walk in, just get whatever you want, throw it in a bag, and walk out. Yeah. Because they've got like scanners or whatever. Yeah, I mean, and that kind of thing's not going away. One of the biggest ones, I think everybody realizes at this point how close we're getting to self-driving vehicles.
I mean, that's happening. There's no doubt that that's happening. And truck drivers, that's like the #1 occupation in something like 37 of the 50 states in this country or something like that. The most popular job is a truck driver. The minute that they have freight that can be fully automated reliably and safely, they will. And all of that will just go away overnight.
Yeah.
And that's going to happen in a lot of industries too. And I'm saying, what else are we going to do? You know what I mean? So that's just how, I just think, again, that's the reality of it. It's going to take something like a universal basic income.
So you think that would be the answer more than basically retraining an entire population to either fix computers or the robots or the drones or any of that? So that may be a bridge too far, basically.
Yes, I think so, yes.
So you're not going to take a truck driver and have him fixing drones? Just doesn't
No,
seem like
I'm
it.
not.
So
And also, I think even if you tried to do that, no matter how many drones there are, I mean, if you think about, let's say like one robot replaces one person in a job capacity, which is not, that's not true.
It's actually many more.
Way more. But even if it is that, I would think that a maintenance person for that robot would also take care of 30 other robots. You know what I mean? Like, it's not going to be broken down all the time.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? So you take the one guy it replaces, and he's going to fix robots now. Well, he's not going to just fix the one robot that took his job. He's going to fix 40 robots. So, and again, the reality is one robot replaces 15 people or whatever.
Yeah.
And when you just follow that, you know, that logic down, it just doesn't track for me, even if you wanted to do that retraining of people or whatever else. The numbers just don't add up to me. But I mean, I'm not an economist or a math. I'm a comedian. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. That's just the way it seems to me.
That sounded pretty good in the scheme of economics, as I understand it. You know, it's weird to be alive at the time when we know robots are going to replace us. You know, like where it's not science fiction anymore. Now it's like, oh yeah, 20 years from now, we're all, when they start talk show hosts, comedians, we're all going to be replaced by robots.
Yeah, and in 20 years, or maybe less, you know, people in San Francisco will be getting super pissed at Alabama for having like anti-robot laws or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, Alabama's going to be discriminating against, you know, robot Americans or whatever.
Yeah, we're becoming an episode of Futurama, basically.
It's wild.